Good morning, Carla. How you doing?
Oh, yes, I'm fine, President Carter. How are you?
Good.
Good, good. Thank you for agreeing to this interview.
I'm delighted.
Okay. Well, my first question for you, what is the goal of these regional one-day New Baptist Covenant gatherings?
Well, I have to go back one step to the overall commitment of the New Baptist Covenant.
Okay.
As you know, last year in January and February, we had about 15,000 people come together in Atlanta for the first meeting of a New Baptist Covenant, the main purpose of which was to assure that all Baptists, liberal, moderate, conservative, fundamentalist, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, could come together in a common meeting and find out what we have, how we can join together in purposes that are not critical of each other and that are completely positive and, in our definition, compatible with the teachings of Jesus Christ. And we had a very successful 3-day meeting in Atlanta. And out of that came the decision that we would have a series of regional meetings this year and in the next 2 years, and before we come back together for our next meeting 3 years after the first one. So we've already had 4 meetings now on a regional basis, and this was the 5th and last one, I believe, for this year.
Okay.
So what we're trying to do is to spread the word about the New Baptist Covenant and let people who were not able or knowledgeable enough to come to Atlanta for the big meeting participate and learn the basic purposes of our group's efforts.
Okay. Have there been any rewards to these regional meetings that you've seen thus far?
Well, I've been to all of them, and I've spoken at all of them, and so has Jimmy Allen and a few other people. I would say the rewards to me have been the tremendous outpouring of supporters, and sometimes just quizzical Baptists who want to see what's going on.
Right.
And the exchanges have been quite exciting in that there have, so far as I know, there's never been one negative word spoken to each other or about anybody that wasn't there. It's been a completely positive thing in the basic format that Christian communities ought to maintain and exhibit. And I've been impressed with the diversity of people who have come.
Okay.
Sometimes there has been a dominance of white Baptists, sometimes a dominance of black Baptists. For instance, when we went to Birmingham, we met at the church where the 4 little girls were killed during the civil rights days, and I would say that the meeting was overwhelmingly, had characteristic of a black Baptist church assembly, and when we've had others further north and so forth, there've been a lot of African American participants, but mostly white. So it's been a good mixture.
Okay.
And I would presume when we come to Oklahoma, we'll have probably more Hispanics than we've had in other places. But the point is that we try to ignore the racial makeup entirely and treat every participant as completely equal with everybody else.
Okay. What have there been? We talked about the rewards. Were there any challenges? Have you all faced any challenges in putting these together and in carrying this?
Well, there have been some challenges because we have limited funds to expend on publicity, and there have been difficulties sometimes in letting the people know in the region what the New Baptist Covenant is about. Since we had a big flurry of publicity during the Atlanta meeting, and since then, the publicity level dies out, and you have to acquaint the people with what is happening. And we've done that primarily through local Baptist church congregations and a few very wonderful and exciting and interesting and gratifying experiences like I'm having with you now that will lead to news articles. So we that's been one of the challenges, is just letting people know what we have in mind, and finding a convenient place and time
Okay.
Has been difficult. I haven't been involved in those organizational meetings. My effort has been mostly restricted to coming, participating in discussions during the day, making a speech, and sometimes always just about answering questions at news conferences, and then returning to my home.
Okay. Do you think that most people understand what the New Baptist Covenant is all about?
Well, I would say most people don't, because
Okay.
you're talking about millions of people in the area. But
Right.
But I would say that an increasing number of people do.
Okay.
So far as I know, there hasn't been any negative reaction to it, although at first there were a few negative comments made by some of the leaders of the Southern Baptist Convention, because they felt like our group would be designed to challenge them to form a new convention, or to criticize our fellow Baptists who were, in leadership positions. But when they found out that this was not the case,
Right.
then I haven't heard of any negative comments from any source.
Okay. I was going to ask you about, I know you didn't want to say anything negative per se, but we have many Southern Baptists here in Oklahoma, and as a matter of fact, they're the predominant denomination.
And also
here.
in Georgia, by the way.
Okay. Okay. So you understand where I'm coming from.
Of course.
And so I was wondering, what their relationship has been with the New Baptist Covenant. I know that they didn't participate. Okay.
Well, that's not exactly true.
Okay.
The top leadership has not participated.
Okay.
But the a lot of the people who have come to our meetings have been from, I would say, very totally dedicated Southern Baptist Convention congregations.
Okay.
For instance, a very large church in Americus, the largest church in our county, Americus, Georgia, which is our county seat here, near Plains. And a lot of their members came to Atlanta and participated, although their church is quite highly placed and very influential in the Georgia Baptist Convention and also in the Southern Baptist Convention.
Okay.
And my own church, as a matter of fact,
Okay.
Maranatha Baptist Church, we give half of our mission gifts to the Southern Baptist Convention Cooperative Program, and we give half of them to the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship, CBF. So we're divide our contributions are divided 50-50 between the two. So I would say that we haven't we've gone out of our way to make sure that every Baptist who wants to have a harmonious community, a non-exclusive community, can come. And I would say we pattern our basic invitation after what the World Baptist Convention, World Baptist Alliance does.
Okay.
Some people believe in women priests, pastors. Some don't. Some people believe in different elements of Baptist faith. Some don't. But we don't define anybody. That you can come and participate only if you accept these principles. We say that if you believe that we're that to the grace of God we're saved by our faith in Jesus Christ, that's our only criterion that we use.
Okay.
That through God's grace we're saved by faith in Jesus Christ.
Okay. Now, you've mentioned earlier that you have been to all of these regional gatherings. How do you see your role? Because I'm sure that here in Oklahoma you're going to attract quite a number of people. How do you see your role? Do you see yourself as the main leader? No.
I think we have about a dozen people, and I would say that the main voices in our organization have been the leaders of the four predominantly African American Baptist conventions.
Okay.
In fact, we scheduled our Atlanta meeting to correlate with their annual conventions.
Okay.
And that's one reason we had for our first meeting, we had about, I would estimate, roughly 50% African American and 50% white. One of the historic factors is that we began this effort knowing that since 1845 there had not been a concerted effort on a large scale to bring African American and white Baptists together.
Okay.
As you may or may not know, in the early 1800s, there was a triennial convention always headquarters in Philadelphia.
Okay.
And that was multiracial in nature.
Okay.
Every Baptist in America was invited to come to that triennial convention. It was a fairly large thing. And then in 1845, the Southerners withdrew because they didn't want to go to church with black worshipers.
Right.
And that's the foundation of the Southern Baptist Convention.
Right.
And when we decided that it was time to break down those barriers, we wanted to do it in a way that was not critical of the Southern Baptist Convention, but just offered an alternative.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I realize now, of course, that the Southern Baptist Convention welcomes black worshipers as well, but many of the black leaders didn't feel at ease with the Southern Baptist Convention.
Right.
And so, without joining in any distinction, we just decided we would cooperate with them. So they were involved in the very early stages of our planning, I would say beginning at least a year before the meeting in Atlanta.
Okay. Now, I know we've only got just a few minutes, and so I've always wanted to ask you this question.
Please.
Why do you think it's the time is now for this kind of for lack of a better term, racial coming together of the Baptists? Why do you think the time is now?
Let me say that this is not the original thing. Back in the 1990s,
mm-hmm.
Now 15, 20 years ago,
okay.
I began to have meetings at the Carter Center with the leaders of the Southern Baptist Convention.
Okay.
They were the only Baptists I knew.
Okay.
And so we had about 40 of the top leaders come to the Carter Center, and I presided over the meetings.
Okay.
And included in those leaders were 7 either past, present, or future presidents
okay.
of the Southern Baptist Convention,
okay.
including the most conservative leaders and the ones that are still very active in the Southern Baptist Convention. And we tried, my purpose was, and their purpose too, was to find some grounds on which all the Baptists could come back together.
Okay.
And we were making, I would say, very good progress. We issued in 1990-something, forgotten the exact year, a common statement that everybody agreed, 100%.
Okay.
And every year when I met with this group, I would ordain, and they would agree that we wouldn't say anything critical about other Baptists.
Okay.
That was the only premise we had. And so we had long discussions, lasted all day long at a time. But then there was a reaction against that by some leaders.
Okay.
And as you possibly know, in the year 2000, in the convention, Southern Baptist Convention in the year 2000, there was some moves made concerning women pastors and other things I need not go into, and then there became a more rigid division. So that was the first effort, which was a very heartfelt and common effort. I'm not criticizing anybody because everybody was involved.
Sure.
But then it kind of died out, and then Jimmy Allen, who was he was president of the Southern Baptist Convention while I was president of the United States, and the president of Mercer University. I invited them to come over to my home in Plains.
Okay.
And we began to say to explore what can we do to rejuvenate this effort to find harmony among Baptists instead of schisms or divisions among Baptists.
Okay.
And that was the first origin. But then we began to say we can't do it without the Baptists, without the African American Baptist leaders. So we kind of turned to them and formed a partnership with them. And we worked on the Atlanta meeting for about a year.
Okay.
So that's kind of a brief history of it.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, now I am right now out of questions because we're out of time, but is there anything else you'd like to share?
No, except I hope that everybody will accept the invitation to come to the meeting and that you're writing about, and that we'll have a harmonious and exciting recommitment of Baptists to to the finest teachings of Jesus Christ. That is to love one another and to work in harmony to expand God's kingdom in the world.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you again so much.
I've enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you.